Okay, let's unpack this because we're diving into a pretty recent legal filing. And it seems to be sending some, well, significant ripples through the whole situation with Sean Diddy Combs.
Mm.
This isn't, just another piece of paper. It's being called potentially devastating.
Right.
And the reason sounds simple, but it's impactful. It allegedly comes down to Diddy's own words.
Exactly. And our focus for this deep dive is like super specific. We're only looking at the details that come from excerpts of a YouTube transcript. And that transcript was analyzing a government filing from June 9th.
Ah, okay.
So this document, straight from the Department of Justice, our source is calling it a game changer.
Right. So our mission today, basically, is to walk you through what this filing allegedly says.
Mm-hmm.
What it claims was found, what Diddy reportedly did or said,
Mm-hmm.
and try to understand why, at least according to this one source, it's seen as potentially so legally devastating. And yeah, we're sticking strictly to the analysis presented in this source material.
Got it. So at the core of this filing are messages. Messages allegedly found on an iPhone 11.
Okay.
It's labeled Device 2 in the document. This phone was apparently seized when Diddy was arrested down in Miami. That was back in September 2024.
September 24th, right?
But the key date for these messages in the filing, that's June 23, 2023, so way before the arrest.
June 23. Okay. And here's where the source says it gets really interesting. According to this filing, these messages allegedly show Diddy talking about another phone.
Yeah, a different one.
Referred to as Device 1. And crucially, he's reportedly discussing finding this phone after those federal raids happened, the ones back in March 2024.
Right, after the raids, that's key. The filing, as our source describes it, actually includes direct quotes from these alleged messages.
Okay, like what?
Well, there's apparently a text to someone they identify as KK. It says something like, "Call me back, it's important good news," I think. And the source connects this to finding the phone.
Good news, I think. Interesting phrasing.
Yeah. And then there are alleged voice notes, or maybe more messages, where he supposedly says things like, I don't know how in the world, but all of a sudden this phone just came up.
Row.
And this part, we found it in the house.
Found it in the house after the feds presumably searched it.
That's what seems to be implied, yeah.
Mm.
He allegedly goes on, there's just data-wise, it has to be a lot of shit on this phone.
Okay, so acknowledging potentially significant content.
And then this line that really jumps out in the source's analysis, I didn't delete nothing.
Wow. Okay, explicitly saying nothing was deleted.
Mm-hmm. The filing reportedly also mentions some detail, like me and female one went to the thing, maybe giving context about what content might be on there from a specific time.
Okay.
Vague but suggestive.
And he also apparently offered to send a picture of this phone, saying, I'm going to send you a picture of it.
So, okay, let's recap that for a second. You've got alleged messages from Diddy himself, dated months before his arrest.
Right, June 23. Acknowledging this other phone, Device 1, saying it was found after the March 24 raids, suggesting it has, a lot of shit on it, data-wise.
Yeah.
And specifically stating, I didn't delete nothing.
That's the picture painted by the source based on the filing.
Okay. And then, according to our source's take on the filing, what happens immediately after these messages? This is what the government might be framing as like a panic reaction.
Pretty much. He allegedly texts the same person, KK, again, but this time it's urgent. He's asking for his lawyer's number, Tenny Geragos.
Okay.
The alleged quotes are pretty direct. Yo, I need to speak to my lawyer. Send me Tenny's number. And then apparently the prayer hand emoji.
Prayer hands.
Yeah.
Adds a certain flavor.
Doesn't it? And the filing reportedly underlines this urgency with another alleged message. I can't play these games right now. Please send me the number. It's important.
I can't play these games right now.
Yeah. And the source notes that this KK person is identified as Diddy's assistant.
She's assistant. Okay.
And also referred to, at least in the analysis our source is looking at, as an unofficial co-conspirator, which is interesting phrasing.
Yeah, definitely raises an eyebrow.
Apparently, KK was maybe like ghosting Diddy at that moment,
Yeah.
but eventually did give him the number.
Okay, so why are these specific messages the focus of this government filing? What's the legal fight here?
Well, it boils down to this core argument framed by our source as a battleground. Attorney-client privilege versus obstruction of justice.
Okay, let's just quickly define those maybe. As the filing seems to see them, according to the source, privilege is like protecting your private talks with your lawyer when you're getting advice, right?
Generally, yeah. Confidential communications for legal advice.
And obstruction.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like getting in the way of an investigation, like maybe hiding evidence or something.
Exactly,
Yeah.
interfering with the process. So, according to the filing described in our source, Diddy's legal team is reportedly arguing that these messages are protected by attorney-client privilege. Because, he was trying to reach his lawyer, he found this phone, he needed legal advice. Makes sense on the surface.
Right. But the government.
The government's argument laid out in the filing is basically, nope. They're saying this exchange is not privileged.
Okay.
And more than that, they're arguing it's actually evidence of obstruction of justice.
Ah. And how are they backing that up? The filing must give reasons.
It does, according to the source. They reportedly point to several things right in the messages themselves.
Like what?
Okay, first reason cited, per the source. The messages asking for the lawyer's number went to the assistant, KK, not directly to the lawyer, Tenny Garagos.
Okay. Does that matter legally?
Apparently, the government argues it does. The filing reportedly calls the assistant's role here just like a telephone operator, just passing along a request, not actually involved in giving or receiving legal advice.
I see. Like a conduit, not part of the privileged conversation itself.
Kind of, yeah. Second, the government reportedly argues the communication wasn't collaborative in the way privilege usually works.
What does that mean?
Like, Diddy allegedly didn't say what was important in those texts to KK. He didn't explicitly link finding the phone to needing the lawyer in that specific exchange. He just discussed the phone, then separately urgently asked for the number.
Okay. So the connection wasn't spelled out in the message seeking the lawyer's contact.
Right. It wasn't like, I found this phone, need to talk to Tenny about it, send number. It was more fragmented.
Gotcha.
And the source mentions the government apparently cites some specific legal cases, Mihakaville and Accurate,
Okay.
which are used in the filing, reportedly, to back up a pretty narrow definition of attorney-client privilege, basically suggesting this situation, as they see it, just doesn't meet the bar.
So the government's framing is less seeking legal advice and more.
More like panic prep is how our source puts the government's perspective, not a protected legal strategy discussion.
And that's why this filing is being called potentially devastating, right?
Yeah.
Because if the government wins this argument,
Then these messages are admissible. They can be used as evidence of obstruction.
let's connect the dots there. Why obstruction specifically?
Think about the timeline and what he allegedly said. The phone, device 1, was reportedly found after the March 2024 federal raids.
Okay, after the investigation was clearly underway.
Yes. And Diddy's own alleged words confirm he knew about it, and importantly, he said he hadn't deleted anything.
Right, a lot of shit on this phone, didn't delete nothing.
So the source highlights that having relevant evidence after an investigation starts, knowing it exists and not turning it over, well, in the context of this filing, that's described as potentially textbook obstruction of justice.
And this is where his own words part becomes so critical, isn't it?
Hugely critical. Our source really emphasizes this point. This isn't, some witness saying something they remember.
Yeah.
It's not circumstantial. It's allegedly Diddy's own voice acknowledging the existence of the device he didn't turn over. He reportedly created a digital trail of his own freakout.
Digital trail his own freakout.
That's it. Yeah, by talking about finding the phone after the raid and then immediately scrambling for his lawyer in a way the government says wasn't privileged, it's specific. It's potentially actionable evidence directly from him.
Especially potent, I guess, when you contrast it with the fact that the feds reportedly did not find this specific phone during their searches back in March.
Exactly. They searched, they didn't find device 1, then later, allegedly, Diddy finds it and texts about it.
So the potential impact, if a judge looks at this filing, agrees with the government, and says, yes, these messages can come in as evidence, what happens then?
Well, the analysis in our source describes that possibility as legally devastating, even structurally ruinous to the defense.
Long words.
Very. If admitted, these alleged communications could very possibly become Exhibit A for the prosecution on an obstruction charge, or maybe influence other aspects of the case.
And our source even threw in some speculation about court scheduling.
Yeah, just a bit of context. Mention that maybe this recent filing could explain some, weird timing in court recently, sessions ending early, starting late, suggesting maybe the legal teams are scrambling behind the scenes to deal with this. Just speculation, though.
Purely speculative, but interesting context. Okay, so let's try and pull this all together then.
Okay.
This June 9th government filing, based only on what our source material analyzed, it really spotlights these alleged messages from Diddy.
Right. Messages discussing finding this potentially key phone device 1 after the federal raid.
And then his follow-up actions, like urgently seeking his lawyer's number through his assistant.
And the government is using all of that, reportedly, to build a case for obstruction of justice, arguing the messages aren't privileged.
And the huge significance, the reason it's potentially so damaging is that it's his own alleged words.
His own voice, supposedly, creating a direct digital record that the prosecution now wants to use against him. It's powerful stuff if it's allowed in.
So the absolutely crucial next step, according to the source, it's up to the judge now.
Yeah, the judge has to rule. Are these messages admissible evidence? Or are they protected by attorney-client privilege, as the defense claims? That ruling will be critical.
So stepping back, what does this whole situation, as described in the filing, really make you think about for you listening? Consider how maybe a moment of alleged panic, or at least urgency, captured in just a few texts and maybe voice notes. How that could potentially become a central pillar in a massive high-stakes legal case.
It really highlights the digital trail, doesn't it? How things we might think are private or just quick messages.
Yeah, even communications trying to get legal help. How they can be scrutinized and potentially turn into evidence themselves, depending on how you communicate and who you communicate with. It's definitely something to mull over.